Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Colin Carr. I'll be chairing the meeting this afternoon. Additionally, on the panel are Councillor Craythorne, Councillor Marshall and Councillor Hopgood. Jill, do you want to do the announcements? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our remote meeting of the Statutory Licensing Subcommittee. Please note that this meeting is being recorded live to the Council's website and will be available to be viewed for a minimum of 6 months. I would like to give a warm welcome to any members of the public or media who are watching this live feed of the meeting. Before I commence with the formal business on the agenda, I would like to cover one of the housekeeping issues for us all to follow in order for a meeting to run as efficiently as possible. Please do bear with us, as this is very new to all of us. For those participating in the meeting, if you could please only speak when invited to speak by myself as chair. Keep your microphone on mute at all times unless invited to speak. Members, if you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function, and that will indicate to me that you wish to speak. Once invited to speak, please introduce yourself with your name and position unless you have already introduced yourself earlier in the meeting. If I lose my connection, please note that Councillor Marshall will take over in my absence until connection is restored. Moving on to the agenda, item 1, apologies for absence, Jill Errington.
There are no apologies for absence, Chair.
Item 2, substitutes, Jill Errington.
There are no substitute members, Chair.
Declarations of interest. No declarations of interest. Item 4 is an application for the grant of a premises licence in respect of the Co-op, Redworth Road, Dale Road, Shildon. Please note that all 4 members will sit during the hearing today, but only 3 councillors will make the decision. The councillors who will make the decision are Councillor Craythorne, Councillor Marshall and myself. The parties to the hearing are Mr. Andy Brown on behalf of the Co-op, Mr. Richard Arnott, solicitor representing the Co-op, Mrs. Webster, the objector. We are also joined by the licensing team lady, Helen Johnson, and the legal advisor in the subcommittee this afternoon is Catherine Hazel. I'll now hand over to Catherine Hazel to run through the procedure for today's hearing. Catherine, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm Catherine Hazel, the legal advisor. So firstly, we'll hear from the licensing officer who'll present her report, and then each party will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the licensing officer, and you'll be invited to do so by the chair. Once that has taken place, the objector, Mrs. Webster, will then present her representations, and each party will have an opportunity to ask her questions. The applicant and his representative will then address the subcommittee, and then each party will have an opportunity to ask them questions as well. Once everybody has spoken, the chair will then invite each party to sum up, and once everybody's finished their summings up, then the chair will end the meeting and go into a separate deliberations meeting with there'll be three members who will determine the outcome of today's application. Once they've reached the decision, the licensing officer will then be advised, and she will notify the parties later on today, and a formal notice of determination in writing will be sent out within a few working days. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, the licensed officer's report. Helen Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is an application for the grant of a premises licence for the subcommittee to consider and determine. It's for Co-op, which was the former Shildon Motor Company, Redworth Road, Dale Road at Shildon, County Durham. A plan showing the location of the premises is attached as Appendix 2, which is at page 9. Just to obviously put some background in the delay in the hearing, we did have to extend the time limit for hearing this application due to the current circumstances surrounding COVID-19. This was done under Regulation 11 of the Licensing Act, and all parties were notified of that. And this is why we're holding the hearing today. So the application, which is attached as Appendix 3, pages 11 to 94, which also includes some additional information provided by the co-op on staff training, induction, checks that are undertaken at the point of sale when alcohol's being purchased. It's for the new premises licence. The application is for the following activities, which is the sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 6 AM until 11 PM. The licensing authority received responses from Durham Constabulary, County Durham and Darlington Fire and Rescue Service, Durham County Council's Environmental Health, Planning and the Safeguarding Children Partnership, all with no comments in regards to the application. Those are attached at pages 100 to 105 at Appendix 5. The licensing authority did receive one letter of representation from another person, which was from Mr. and Mrs. Webster. That's attached as Appendix 4, pages 96 to 98. The subcommittee is asked to determine the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, and they're recommended to give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, the representation, including any supporting information presented by all parties, Durham County Council Statement of Licensing Policy, which the relevant parts are attached as Appendix 6, pages 107 to 117. The guidance under Section 1A2 of the Licensing Act 2003, the relevant parts of those are attached at Appendix 7, pages 119 to 126. So options available to members today are to grant the licence subject to conditions that are consistent with the operating schedule accompanying the application and the mandatory conditions set out in the Licensing Act 2003. Grant the licence subject to modified conditions to that of the operating schedule where the committee considers it appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. To exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activity to which the application relates. To refuse to specify a person on the licence as the designated premises supervisor, or to reject the application. Thank you, Chair, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Do any questions have to come from Mr. Arnott or Mr. Brown, please? No? Mrs. Webster, do you wish to ask anything of the licensing officer, please?
No.
It's all right.
How can the licence be granted to sell alcohol from 6 till 11 PM, 7 days a week, when other shops can only sell open for 6 hours on a Sunday?
Okay. Helen, do you wish to answer that?
Chair, I don't know if this is part of Mrs. Webster's representation.
If it is, it'll have to come later, but can you answer it just on the point that she's raised?
Yeah, so premises, people who are applying for a licence can apply for any hours that they wish. I believe they are Sunday trading hours, but it depends on what type of premises they are in terms of planning. I don't know if the applicant solicitor wants to come in there to clarify.
Yeah.
Sunday trading laws that are of a particular size.
Mr. Arnott, can you lift your mic up, please?
There isn't a mic as such, sir. I'm dealing with the laptop in front of me, but can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Sunday trading laws only apply to stores of a certain size, and we are below that size. So that 6-hour restriction does not apply to us. And the application we've made mirrors entirely the current licensing hours granted to the store that we already have in Shildon.
Thanks very much. Okay, Catherine Hazel, do you wish to answer anything or have any questions, please?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. The objector's representation now, Mrs. Webster, it's your turn now to say exactly what you wanted to do, which is within your letter.
I don't understand.
What you're going to say.
Could I ask any more questions or not?
Well, first of all, what you need to do is to go to your letter and then refer to your letter in your presentation. Okay.
Well, my concerns are actually antisocial behaviour, customers being served up till 11 o'clock at night, every night of the year, no let up at all, 7 days a week. Now, before the bypass was built, this part of the town was a accident black spot, this corner. I feel that that's going to maybe encourage more traffic to come to this area, you know, and make things worse. That's
Okay.
one thing.
Is there anything else you wish to add?
Well, I would like to think that they could make it less hours if they must have it.
Right.
Have less hours. I
Okay.
believe the one at the bottom of the street's only till 10 o'clock, isn't it, on the night?
I'll bring you. I'll bring you in, Mr. Arnott and Mr. Brown. I'll bring you in shortly. Is there anything else, Mrs. Webster? We need to make sure that you're happy with the hearing that you're given.
It's just as I say, that the area, the road, it's the unit where the gates where they all going to go into, all these new units in the co-op. I feel that it's too near to the allotments, which are very well used, and the garages. People have a job to get out sometimes because of the traffic, and I feel this is going to make it even worse.
Okay, fine, thank you. If that completes your presentation, Mr. Arnott, on behalf of Mr. Brown, do you have any questions of Mrs. Webster? No. Helen, do you wish to ask any questions? Helen Johnson,
If I can just come in, Chair, just to confirm that the premises licence for the co-op at 18 Redruth Road, Shildon, which is currently licensed at the moment, just to confirm, it's sale by retail of alcohol, off sales, Monday to Sunday, 6 AM till 11 PM. Just to confirm, they don't have to necessarily open throughout them hours, just they are licensed for them hours.
Okay. Do any members have any questions of Mrs. Webster?
What about the car park? You know, they can buy it and take it out of the place. They can't drink it on the premises. What about the car park? Does that consist of the premises or not? Will people be able to sit in the cars in the car park and drink, or hang about in the car park?
I think, Helen, what Mrs. Webster's concerned about is the car park within the licensing area of the application.
No, Chair.
It's not.
It's just the store. It includes the car park on the plan, but that's the site boundary. But the actual premises is what the premises license covers. I don't know if Richard or Andy can confirm that.
Yes, if Mr. Arnott can.
Chair, members of the committee, the licence applies to the four walls of the premises, as it were. It does not apply to the car park.
So they can do what they like once they go out of the premises.
Chair, no, they can't. I'll be addressing you on that in due course.
Okay. Mrs. Webster, you've had the opportunity to speak. You cannot keep asking questions when somebody else is going to ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I know it's unusual because it's the first time you've been at one. Mr. Brown, do you have anything to say? Do you have any questions of Mrs. Webster? No? Okay. Catherine, do you have any questions to raise? Or
No
any
questions.
points to raise?
No, thank you.
No. Okay. Right, in that case, it's up to the presenters now, Mr. Arnott or Mr. Brown, whoever's going to present.
Chair, good afternoon. My name's Richard Arnott. I'm a partner in a law firm called Lord Hadaway, and I represent the co-op up and down the country in their contested licensing applications. And Andy Brown, who we have with us this afternoon, he's co-op's area manager. And Andy will keep me right if there are any operational issues that I can't deal with, but bearing in mind I've been doing co-op work for over 10 years. There's not much that I haven't dealt with, but let's see. What I'm not going to do this afternoon, though, is take up any of your time trying to explain who the co-op are. I'm sure you're more than familiar with the brand. Save, I will say, 6th largest retailer in the country, 2,500 stores. I think it's something like 78,000 people employed in food alone, and we are the world's largest consumer cooperative with around 8.2 million members. And we're very proud of that. We've been around for a very long time, about 170 years. All being well, and this afternoon is a significant part of all being well, a new Co-op convenience store will open, as we've heard, on the site of the former Shildon Motor Company, and that will happen in October. The current store, which I think we've been in Shildon for a number of years, that will in due course close. The lease for that expires in a couple of years' time, so this was an absolutely wonderful opportunity to develop a new purpose-built store. So it is not that the good people of Shildon will have two co-ops, they will eventually have one. Staff will move from the old one up to the new one at the appropriate time. The old one will be redeveloped, but we would not allow it to be a rival type business. Obviously, we won't allow anybody to compete with ourselves. So it would not be the case that the grant of a licence today would result in effectively an extra licence in Shildon. We are swapping old for new. Being a convenience store, part of that convenience to our customers, whether they're popping in for the family shop or whether they're topping the fridge or the larder up, is for them to be able to buy alcohol from us, as well as everything else that they might need to keep their families sustained. Typically, alcohol represents, though, with a shop of this size, only around 15% of turnover. So if we do the maths, 85% of what we will anticipate selling at these premises will be groceries, bread, milk, household products. This isn't would never be a dedicated off license in the sort of booze buster sense. Having said that, I would probably need another analogy, since Booze Buster did go bust. But we are not your Thresher type premises. We are a convenience store with ancillary alcohol sales, as you would now expect, sort of in the modern convenience market. Now, with so many stores, and I think I've already said around 170 years worth of experience, we understand what's expected of us by you, our neighbours, responsible authorities, and we invest a lot of time and effort in making sure that we don't let anybody down. So, for example, each region has a risk manager. His or her job to ensure that we liaise with our neighbours, with the responsible authorities, if we have any issues, to get them resolved quickly, and to make sure that we aren't anything other than a positive influence on our communities. To ensure that our policies and procedures are applied in store at the coalface, we have bespoke training colleagues, and they help together with risk managers to make sure that we get everything as right as we possibly can. Co-op are, by their very nature and culture, a risk-averse business. When I have meetings with them, the word risk gets mentioned sort of every 10 minutes. It's not something that they willingly engage in, unlike some of the other national supermarkets. And we see getting it right as self-defence, really, because getting it wrong is risk. It's risk to our reputation, it's risk to our local panels of members, and it's risk to the business. So there's no point in doing it, no point at all. There's no commercial imperative that would persuade us to take risks. For each new member of staff, we have an induction process, and that ends with an exam. That's on day one, and the exam deals with lots of different things, but obviously how we deal with age-restricted products is an important part of that. If you don't pass your exam, you're not allowed anywhere near an age-restricted product. But having said that, even if you do pass your exam, there is still a process. We take this term from diving. It's called a buddy system, where a new member of staff is allocated sort of a new best friend within the business, and it's their job to keep an eye on them, sort of a mentor, if you like, to make sure that they understand what is required of them. And then on top of that, we have another process called lockdown. And the way that lockdown works is that even if you've passed your exam, even if your buddy is happy with you, you are still not allowed to sell alcohol. It is only at the point at which your store manager is happy with you are you released from lockdown. And the way that sort of works in practical terms is that each cashier has a unique code. All the tills are electronic. I'll mention that in a moment. And that code is not unlocked until the store says you are happy. And the advantage of that is that that assures us that not only do you know the law, but also that you're robust enough to apply it. Because it's no good not being able to, challenge and be able to apply what we're teaching you. So lockdown typically takes around 4 weeks. So at that point, and only at that point, is a new member of staff allowed to sell alcohol. And then in addition, we would have probably on average about 2 refreshers every year, again an exam. And whether you've been with us for a week or 35 years, you still get those refreshers. And if you fail those refreshers, it tipped back into lockdown. If at any point in your employment the store manager loses confidence in you, back into lockdown, and it's up to you to prove to us that you know what you're up to and capable of applying these very important rules. You've seen within your agenda some information that I've given on training. I'm not going to go through that, it's self-explanatory. CCTV, internal and external, there will be at least 16 cameras at these particular premises. We have age-prompt tills as well. When I started doing licensing many years ago, the first age-prompt tills was the mechanical thing, so you press the button. These are all very modern, and they are, every product is barcoded. So when you sweep through, say, alcohol, the till recognises it as an age-restricted product, and the till reminds the cashier on a screen, this is the process, this is what you have to do. And it's only when you have satisfied the till, that you've gone through that process, does it allow you to complete the transaction. So effectively, every time you're trying to sell alcohol as a cashier, you get a refresher, a reminder of what the process is. The layout of the premises, again, you have the plan. It's very simple, one way in, one way out. You can see the position of the tills, you can see the aisles, you can see also the position of, we've got BWS, beers, wine and spirits. That being said, spirits are kept behind the counter. There's a perspex door to the counter. So generally, members of the public, customers don't get direct access to spirits. Now, there might be certain occasions of Valentine's Day, Christmas, but generally spirits are kept behind the counter and beers and wines are within view. That being said, obviously, we have all of those cameras. And I'm not going to bore you with the CCTV system. I spend hours being told all about the fantastic things that they're doing with CCTV. We're working with Microsoft at the moment for age recognition technology. It is fantastic, but I'll just leave it at that. And please just be assured we have a brilliant system. Staff, there will be 15 members of staff with at least 3 personal licence holders. Now, if you imagine your average pub probably just has 1 personal licence holder, and that's the DPS. We would have 3, so it would be very rare for a DPS, sorry, for a personal licence holder to not be at the store. 6 till 11, that's several shifts, so we would generally have always a personal licence holder present, but then everybody selling alcohol has gone through the training that I've already mentioned. Challenge 25, we've applied that throughout the estate for many years. We were the first national to adopt that as a standard, better standard than Challenge 21. I've seen correspondence between us and the Home Office, where we're advocating that as an age verification policy, and that is now industry standard. Being the co-op as well, we're very community orientated. That's really our unique selling point, if you like. We're about the community. We have a membership organisation, we have regional membership boards, etc. Last November, we donated around £19 million nationally to worthy causes. And you can imagine that sort of £500, £1,000 makes a massive difference to organisations. We already support in the locality Fit for Life, the Ford Clock Centre in Bishop, Man, Health and Mind, and we will continue to support. Every year people make an application to us for a share of that pot, and those are the charities that we're working with locally at the moment. I'm sure they'll make their applications again, but there might be different charities going forward. We take our responsibilities very seriously with so many stores nationally, but also within this area too. We've been in the locality for many years. If we just were no good at this, if there was systemic failure, you'd know all about it. And there's several reasons why it's important to us. We certainly wouldn't want to embarrass our local members. Review and prosecution is an embarrassment. We wouldn't want that. But there's also, for the cynics, a commercial imperative as well. If our shops are unwelcoming, if people in the locality, our neighbours, don't think well of us, we'll just go shop somewhere else. So I'm afraid, beg your pardon, that we have commercial, legal and moral imperative to not attract risk to the premises. The intention is to trade 6 to 11. That is exactly the same as we have at the current store, and it also reflects our planning permission. I know planning is entirely separate, but just for your information, planning has been granted to those times. Obviously, we reflect on the Secretary of State's guidance 10.15, which says that supermarkets, shops should be allowed to trade throughout, should be allowed to sell alcohol throughout the time during which they trade. The obvious question is, who's buying alcohol at 6 in the morning? Well, not very many people at all. But if it's convenient for you because you're coming back from a shift, or my wife's a nurse, she does night shifts, she comes back at that time, that's when she does her shop. What we don't want to do is to say to a perfectly reasonable customer like that, I'm sorry, if you want to buy a bottle of wine, you're going to have to come back later. But be assured that throughout the period of training, whether it's 6 in the morning, trading 10 in the morning, 11 o'clock at night, the same policies and procedures apply. We promote licensing objectives throughout hours of trading. There are no objections, as you've been told, from any of the responsible authorities. You've seen, I hope, the robust conditions that we've applied to our application. They are good, solid conditions and should assuage any reasonable concerns. We do, however, have a single residential objection from Mr. and Mrs. Webster. Before I comment briefly on that, I think it's maybe useful at this point just to reflect on the law. And generally, I'll sort of tread very carefully at this point because I know you've got Catherine and I don't want to tread on her toes. But the law is very clear as to what we can and can't do in circumstances like this. This is not entirely on an objector to convince you that we would fail at this location to promote licensing objectives. And it's an evidence-based process as well. 9.42 of the guidance confirms that. We also have, as I'm sure Catherine will confirm, Her Honour Judge Black in the Thwaites case. Speculation isn't what we're all about today, it's evidence. I spend a lot of my time traipsing up and down the country, well, not at the moment, but attending hearings like this. And residents will often say, well, that's really unfair, how can we predict the future? You can't, I understand that, but that's what the law is. And there's no crystal ball, you can't tell what is going to happen, but you can't speculate either. And at the end of the day, God forbid, were we to get anything wrong, there is obviously robust enforcement, review, prosecution, etc. So it's not that once a license is granted, that's the end of it. So dealing with Mrs. Webster's representation, she talks about, or Mr. and Mrs. Webster, beg your pardon, antisocial behaviour needs gathering. But put yourselves in the shoes of a furtive teenager. You're not going to be hanging around our car park where there is CCTV, which is lit, and people coming backwards and forwards, people who will keep an eye on you. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at the store that we have at Redwood Road at the moment. And she, in fact, confirms that. She describes that as a perfectly good store. So there is no reason, no reasonable reason to suspect that that would be any different. Here, if they were up to no good, they would be on CCTV and we would get the police and they would be dealt with in due course. Having said that, and I'm sure Mr. Brown will confirm this as well, teenagers just aren't interested in hanging around shops anymore. Maybe in the past, but they're too busy staring at their smartphones now to be bothered standing out in the cold and bothering us or bothering our customers. We don't attract antisocial behaviour. I'm sort of a cynic, I've been doing this for a very long time. We leave that sort of nonsense up to the independents, who are perhaps more likely to engage in activity that we would never dream of. So I'll leave that there. Drink drivers, she says that we may attract drink drivers. Well, it's against the law to sell alcohol to anybody who is drunk, so we wouldn't do that. There's no commercial imperative which would oblige us to do that or tempt us to do that. So again, there is no reason why we should do that here. And of course, if we had that propensity, the police would be telling you all about it because of the existing Redwood Road store, and as you've heard, they don't object. She then talks about need. Well, again, as we know, section 182, Statutory guidance confirms that need is not a relevant consideration. And then she says, would you like it outside of your front door? Well, personally, I wouldn't be bothered one little bit. I know the co-op, I trust them, they're a very, very good and responsible organisation. There is a second letter as well, page 98, and it sounds there, with all due respect to her, that she just doesn't want a shop outside her house. And I get that, but planning permission has already been granted. This is not about whether we can open a shop. This is simply about whether there is evidence that we would fail to promote licensing objectives. And with all due respect to all of you, there is no evidence, so I would commend the application to you.
Colin, you're on mic, on mute.
Sorry, it keeps flicking on a mute and unmute. Mr. Brown, I was asking if you wanted to support Mr. Arnott in any of his presentation or not.
I think, sorry, the door's going, sorry about that. No, I think that's fine. I just would say around working with the community and the Safer Colleagues, Safer Communities piece that we're doing as well. We'd want to work, you know, alongside people and keep people safe. So I'm fine with what's been covered.
Okay, that's fine. Right now, it's Mrs. Webster to ask questions. Now you can ask questions of Mr. Arnott or Mr. Brown, Mrs. Webster. If you unmute Mrs. Webster and you ask the questions, please. Mrs. Webster, your daughter will have to help you unmute. That's it.
Sorry.
Right. Yes.
Do you know what the other two units are going to be? I know it's nothing to do with this, but what they're going to.
This is purely about the licensing matter for the co-op, so nothing else is relevant at the minute. Is there anything you wish to clear with Mr. Arnott or Mr. Brown? Mrs. Webster, are you all right?
Yes.
Okay, right. Helen, do you have any questions?
No, Chair, I've got nothing.
Okay. Any members of the panel? Councillors? No.
Councillor Hopwood, Chair.
Amanda, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Chair, can I just ask Mr. Arnott, the opening hours, you're applying for a licence from 6 till 11, but the current store, and I know at the moment it closes at 8 according to the website, but the normal hours are 7 till 10 of the other one in Shildon, according to your own website and the website advertising the hours in the town. Is that wrong, or are these going to be extended from what you currently operate in Shildon?
We will probably operate 6 to 11, which is what the licence we are applying for would allow us to do. And the current licence for Redwood Road is 6 to 11 as well. I appreciate what you say about 30 hours for that store, but I would anticipate that this being a new store will be 6 to 11 operating as well as licensed.
Chair, can I come back on that? Is this new store going to have a petrol station attached to it? Just your own policy within, when you read your opening hours on your own website, says the only ones with petrol stations are open till 11 o'clock. The vast majority of all the others close at 10, as do all the ones locally to where I live.
Sorry, Mr. Arnott, you're on mute, Mr. Arnott. That's it.
Yeah, I've acted for co-op for, as I say, over 10 years, and all of the co-ops that I can recall have a terminal hour of 11, and the vast majority operate to that terminal hour. It is not unusual for us to operate our stores until 11.
Amanda, do you have anything further?
Well, I just think perhaps you need to have a look at your website then, because quite clearly it is only the odd one that is open till 11 o'clock according to your own website, and nearly there is the statement that says that that's when it has a petrol station attached to it.
Can I come in there as well, Mr. Arnott? Have you read the council's licensing policy? Because the recognised hours of the licensing policy is 7 o'clock in the morning till 11:30 at night. Did you consider that when you put the application in?
Chair, we can promote the licensing objectives from 6 in the morning. 7 is, with respect, an arbitrary time that's been chosen by your good selves. And yes, I have read the policy. I've done many applications in Durham. But 6 o'clock is our standard commencement time. and we can promote the licensing objectives from 6, 7, 8, 9 or whatever. And I know you say there that the terminal hour would be 11:30, well, we've applied for less than 11:30.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking about 7 o'clock is most of the policies that we are agreeing are from 7 o'clock till 11:30 maximum. That's why I'm asking. And normally when somebody's applying for a new license like this, they generally adhere to the licensing policy of the local authority.
Chair, in order to impose that policy, sort of trying to be diplomatic, there would have to be evidence that we would be incapable of promoting the licensing objective before 7. With all due respect, I've not heard any evidence to that effect this afternoon.
Okay, fair enough. Any other members have any questions? No. Catherine, do you have any clarification questions to seek?
No, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we now go on to the situation of summing up in the same order as the presentations were. Helen first. Summing up, Helen.
All right, no. Sorry.
No, Chair, there's nothing else from me.
Okay, Mrs. Webster, do you want to sum up in any way?
I'd just like to thank you all, for giving me a chance to speak up.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Arnott, Mr. Brown, do you wish to sum up in any way?
I think neither Mr. Brown nor I have anything useful to add, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. What will now happen is the 3 councillors who were named at the beginning will now withdraw, and we will make the decision. Everyone will, well, the licensing decision will be put on the licensing department's website later today. Okay, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you for the way you've taken part today. It's all new to all of us, so thank you very much, everyone. Okay, bye now.
Thank you. Bye.